Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader by Owlcat Games. And for those of you who watched my early access series, you've got a pretty good idea of what you're in for. But for those who haven't, you are in for quite a ride. For in the grimdark future, there is only war. And we are about to dive right into the middle of that mess. That said, obviously I'm no stranger to this game. I did like 70 episodes on the early access builds. So we are just going to dive right in. Those rogues certainly won't trade themselves. And first things first, we need to set our difficulty. And right off the bat here, I will say, I tested on unfair. It's manageable. I can theoretically handle it, but it totally wrecks the pacing. If I were doing like an endurance live stream maybe, but considering that we also want to show tangible progress per episode here, I'm going to skip save scum mode, and we'll just go for hard. That's still a step up from daring, which is what we played on in the early access series. So it should pose some challenges, while simultaneously allowing us to actually make, progress. But, if things do become too easy, we'll certainly reevaluate. And now for CharGen. And, I have had some people who've expressed disappointment that I've kind of skimmed over this part in my last couple of series. So, you know what? Fair enough. We'll go through the whole thing. Though, really, it's fairly straightforward this time around. And as per usual, I've left the broad strokes of our character up to the raiders via a series of polls on Patreon and YouTube's community section. They basically painted the broad strokes for me, then I filled in the lines. And with that in mind, we are not going with a roguish swashbuckler this time out. Instead, we're going with a cold and calculating crime lord, albeit with a soft spot for the underdog, for the downtrodden masses, which I suppose is a very unusual stance to take in the world of Warhammer 40k, but it is what it is. It's what the Raiders voted for, and thus it is what we are doing. Let's go for a more conservative, thin hairstyle. Yeah, that works. It'll largely be moot in just a second. Brows are fine, but let's get a good 5 o'clock shadow going. And tattoos. Ooh, some of these are new. Alright, yeah, let's go for this one. We'll say our rogue trader here is a former member of the Planetary Defense Force of some backwoods planet, and still bears the markings thereof. And this is where most of our hair parts, for we are going with some severe cranial implants. We'll take this one as the base, get a good chrome dome going. And then something else to further imply extensive cranial reconstruction, which just leaves voice.
Fit for the fond Phalanxius annals.
Ah, bold voice, I will miss you. I liked how you were constantly leaving things strewn across the stars. But we're more the gravel-voiced, calm and collected type now. Let's go down the list.
Let my fury rain down upon thee!
Engage the engines. Through chaos, I stride.
Death's hand reaches for me.
Okay, well, I love that one, but it is not what we're going for.
To arms!
So, yeah, we're obviously going pragmatic. And there we go. One refurbished rogue trader. Of course, that's just a shell. We still have to do his backstory, so let's plan it out. And I will say, looking at our options here, the two main contenders are Voidborn and Forge World, both of which are intelligence-based. That's important, since that will be our primary attribute. But ultimately, I think Forge World wins out because it is slightly more in keeping with what I've envisioned for this character. I will say, though, I gave some serious consideration to the Be Smart talent on Voidborn as well. I just couldn't get it to fit. Especially since Forgeborn also came with built-in cybernetics. And, as if it weren't obvious, we are going for analytics. We're an intelligence-based character, it's a natural fit. We're starting off with a meager plus 4% bonus, but I am anticipating doubling that by the time we hit the end of Act 2. After that, we have to get some class. And, as aforementioned, I think, we are going for Crime Lord. Which, to be fair, we did do back in Early Access, but that was before they actually added all the Crime Lord stuff to it. It was just a title back then, but now we actually have this mess. This variable, surefire plan mechanic. We'll mainly be using it for the offense option, but we'll want to keep those other options in mind, especially the defense buff. And then we have access to an assortment of unique talents, specifically keyed towards further honing that ability. We'll be taking one, maybe two of those. Which brings us to a very intriguing part of the character generation. Our Triumph and our Darkest Hour, which were present in some of the early access builds, but didn't really have any actual function. That has very much changed in the full launch build. They have a very minor mechanical impact, essentially a +5, -5 modifier to certain skills. But more notably, much more notably, they are now also tied into the narrative of the game. It impacts how certain characters interact with you, and how your character interacts with certain things they encounter. So, with that in mind, given the guidelines laid out by the Raiders, I believe our Triumph will be Apex of Brilliance. Using our genius analytical mind to subvert an entire sector into our service. Mechanically, that's a +5 to logic. And then that will be counterbalanced by our Darkest Hour. Oh, and I will stress, each origin actually has its own set of 3 Triumphs and Darkest Hours, all of which have unique dialogue and interactions throughout the campaign. I'm thinking we'll go with Shadow of Torment. We were arrested and thoroughly interrogated using creative and violent methods. Which, again, kind of plays into our current condition. The scars, the analytics implant, the cranial reconstruction. From a mechanic standpoint, I believe that is a -5 on carouse, which we weren't going to be good at anyway. But from a narrative standpoint, it essentially gives our character a strong aversion to torture or harsh interrogation, with a risk of flashbacks or PTSD when forcibly confronted with it. I felt that would fit pretty nicely because, ultimately, the Raiders want this character to be largely benevolent, but one who keeps his options open where other convictions are concerned. Background-wise, we can assume our character was an average Imperial citizen, joined up with his planetary defense force, picked up some combat skills, intelligence analysis, logistics, but ultimately became disillusioned by what he saw as the failings of the senior officers, the local noblemen, people in power, essentially. Not the Emperor himself. He, of course, is infallible. But the people who serve him, much less so. He came to resent what he saw as the abusive nature of the elite. People hiding behind imperial dogma to carry out what he saw as cruel acts of depravity. He also questioned the logic of not using every tool available, Xenos or otherwise, especially when lives are on the line. Hence his entry into the cold trade, which he turned out to be fairly adept at, right up until he started dabbling in chaos artifacts. To him, just another resource, but something which ultimately caused him to run afoul of the Inquisition, who did not treat him kindly, which has left him somewhat traumatized and deeply mistrustful of the Inquisition. Diving back into the mechanics, next we have to choose our archetype. And no real question here, we're going operative. That's what the raiders voted for. And I will say, I was really hard on operative back during the early access builds, but they did a great job of shoring it back up. I have no regrets about taking it now. In fact, minor spoiler, I suppose, but ultimately we are going to have multiple operatives in our squad. I was a little worried about redundancy, but it turns out they build off each other really well. After that, we've got characteristics, we've got 30 points in our pool, and as a sniper-based operative, our 3 primary stats are ballistic skill, intelligence, and perception. It is a bit of a shame that we don't have any points left for agility. That would be nice to have for the sake of dodge and some other things that'll come up later, but we just don't have enough points to go around, not to 4 different stats. And almost done. Next we've got our void ship. And aside from naming this thing, there's not really much to do here. Behold, the Raider, our glorious void ship to be. I will note, it's a little weird here, because in some early access builds, we actually got to choose what type of void ship we started with. For whatever reason, they seem to have taken that feature out. Then again, I should also stress that I am currently playing a press build. I'll be updating to the full launch build once it rolls out, but things might be slightly different for the actual launch. And there you have it. 1 rogue traitor. All that's left is our name, and I honestly couldn't resist. With our surname already set in stone as von Valancius. Behold, Valen von Valancius. Though, in his defense, prior to becoming the heir to a rogue traitor, he was simply Valen Stubbs. Stubbs being the default crime lord surname. It was either that or a pun or a pop culture reference, and given the grimdark nature of the game, I figured we'd play this one straight. Valen at least sounds like a proper name. Alright, let's get this show on the road.
An excellent place for contemplation. One has the best view of the cathedral from here. Mesmerizing, wouldn't you say? An impeccable manifestation of the God Emperor's sublimity.
The man who has approached you is gazing down into the depths of the vast temple on one of the lower decks. Yeah, I suppose it is. Not really my style, though.
I believe there are those among us who share that sentiment. But such is our duty, is it not? To overcome base weaknesses and desires, so as to excel in our service to the God Emperor. the master of humanity.
The man shakes his head and gives you a sympathetic look.
Allow me to introduce myself. Conrad Voigtveer, Master of Whispers, in the employ of Her Ladyship Rogue Trader Theodora von Valencias, at your service. I haven't had the pleasure of speaking with you in person before.
Voigtveer bows his head and focuses his attention on you. Valen Stubbs. Calixis Sector.
My regards. Naturally, the infamy of your achievements in the shadows of an entire sector is not unknown to me. Your enterprising spirit and, if you excuse my bluntness, refusal to die are qualities worth saluting. It is as if you were carried here on the wings of destiny itself.
Voigtveer smiles faintly, but you're not sure it is directed at you. And look at that, we've already got some reactivity there. Addressing both our moment of triumph and our darkest hour, I think? That would imply what? 48 unique lines, just so they could address all possible background combos?
I will be frank with you. You may forget your past titles, no matter who gave them to you, or what their origins are. From the moment you and the other candidate were brought aboard this void ship, your fate changed. You now serve Lord Captain Theodora von Valencias, and carry the burden of an heir of this house. Henceforth, you share your dynastic name with Her Ladyship. Bear it with honor.
Lord Captain? That's quite a title. Can't say I'm familiar with it.
Such are the traditions of the Imperium. Lord Captain is the title that was established in the annals of the Lex Imperialis at the time when the first rogue traders entered the Gold Emperor's service, and therefore, it is sacrosanct.
And what about you? You've got quite the fancy title yourself. Master of Whispers, you said? Can't imagine what you do.
To put it plainly, I am the head of the network of spies and informers who serve the interests of House von Valencias. I uncover weak links both among Lady Theodora's retinue and in the ranks of her rivals. I eliminate our vulnerabilities and exploit those of others.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, anything you can tell me about our host? Haven't had the pleasure of a face-to-face, but I wouldn't mind a heads up on what I'm getting myself into.
I would rather not discuss the Lord Captain behind her back, especially not on board her ship. No one knows better than I that whispers are wont to attract particularly close attention. Suffice it to say that Her Ladyship is the bearer of the sacred warrant of trade and a woman of immense power and entitlement. However privileged your position may be, I ask that you do not incur her anger by being disrespectful or obtuse. Lady Theodora despises both qualities.
Fair enough. I can respect that. Can you at least give me an idea of why I'm here?
So that you may fulfill your blood duty. Whatever obligations you had before, they are henceforth null and void. By order of the Lord Captain, you have been requisitioned to serve the rogue trader, indeed blessed by the God Emperor.
Is that so?
Your former position may have been different from conventional service as part of one of the institutions of the Imperium, But from now on, a different fate awaits you. One chosen for you by the Lord Captain. I advise you to come to terms with this reality as quickly as possible.
You mentioned heirs, plural. So I'm not the only one. There's others?
There is. And you will meet him soon enough.
Voidbear shrugged slightly. Can't wait. Let's get to the point. I imagine you tracked me down for more than just idle gossip and non-answers?
But of course, I have come to invite you to a meeting with Lady Theodora. I imagine you have many questions for your patroness, and I'm sure she has just as many questions for you. It is regrettable that you haven't yet had an opportunity to speak. It has been an arduous voyage thus far. The Lord Captain and Master Edelthrad von Valencius are conversing on the observation platform. Let us join them there.
Lead the way. And we're in. Obviously, I've left the tutorials enabled. I don't plan on paying them much mind, but folks who are curious about them can pause and read them at their leisure. As for me, I am going to try to keep things moving along. A massive conference table, obviously crafted from real wood. A resource of incredible value aboard a void ship.
The sacred mechanism has been interfered with without due reverence. The duration of the data processing cycle has tripled.
My bad. Sorry. Incomprehensible information is displayed on a large screen above the cogitators. You can make out references to unfamiliar systems and worlds among the numbers and logisticar symbols. And let's maybe not push more buttons. We'll just keep moving. A candlelit altar with a copy of the 2348th volume of the Lex Imperialis, the Codex of the Sacred Laws of the Imperium. Neat.
One of the von Valencius trophy rooms. Perhaps you would like to take a look around after your audience with the Lord Captain.
Perhaps I would.
What's happening? Run! The servitors have gone berserk!
Oh, dear.
Challenges make the spoils that much sweeter.
And here's our combat tutorial. Valen, shoot! Shoot, and don't let it get close. I think we can manage that. Hey. Looks like Voigtmir's an operative too. Good for him. Alright, let's deal with this overly aggressive servitor guide. Was it just the one that went berserk? I thought it was two in the animation.
Let's make some opportunities.
standard action point and movement point system. I don't think I really need to explain that.
I'll see to it personally.
Oh, right, okay, the other servitor died. That's its body right behind this one. Voidbeer, you mind if I, get your back?
I'll make it happen.
Now, Museum, now you don't. I can scarcely believe it. On a day like this. What suspiciously poor timing for such an accident. Servitors malfunction on the officer's deck at exactly the same moment when the rogue traitor and her heirs are gathered here. Without taking his eyes off the body on the floor, Voidbeer removes the boxcaster from his belt and speaks a few quick orders into the device. Then he turns to you. I have blocked all passages between the upper and lower sectors of the residential decks. If this is a deliberate attack, it should stop the culprits from advancing their plan. Spread out. No one is allowed to enter the premises. Stations! At your service, Master Voidbeer. The lines on Voidbeer's forehead soften, and his voice regains its usual courtesy. I'm afraid I must remain here, Valin. For Lady Theodora's safety, I have to oversee the execution of these orders personally. I hope you will have no difficulty reaching the observation platform on your own. It is just at the end of this corridor. The Master of Whispers gives you a curt bow. Interesting, interesting. That didn't play out quite how I was expecting, but the broad strokes are still the same. Oof, yeah, and we are not working with much at the moment.
I always keep my options open.
Really wish we could loot these corpses, maybe grab something with slightly more punch to it. These windows look into the next room, not outside the void chip. You cannot make out anything through the cloudy glass, only the weak light filtering through from that side.
Keep your wits about you.
The observation platform is at the end of this corridor. Right. Tarantula sentry gun, constructed with the blessings of the Adeptus Mechanicus, using a standard template construct on the manufactorums of Kiava Gamma. The wires in the servitor's head are still smoldering. It would seem the cause of this malfunction was the short-circuiting of the motive force. I see, I see. Lehman Russ battle tank, reclaimed and restored by the grace of the God Emperor. The first to breach the capital walls during the pacification of Vortes Chiton. If I see you raise your head again, I'll hand you over to the tech priest for servitorization. This exhibit is unfinished. Another symbol of House von Valancius's valor will be displayed here at some point in the future. Now see, that is interesting because that is not what it was like in the early access. Back in early access, there were animal cages here, and the initial tutorial battle was against an escaped exotic beast, not malfunctioning servitors. I wonder why they changed it. Your Lordship, do not worry. All threats have been eliminated. It is absolutely safe here.
Always keep your eye on the price.
Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. A gray-green crystal with white veins. A low hum can be heard coming from the artifact. A strange object that resembles sea coral. The porous surface is pitted, a sign that it has been underwater. The stone on the pedestal is no doubt solid, but its surface shimmers and changes hue, as if someone has captured a piece of turbulent sea within the rock. A massive golden amalgam interspersed with sparking particles. A black shard resembling obsidian. If you look closely, you can discern a strange, barely perceptible glow inside the artifact. A violet alloy, which, upon closer examination, turns out to be a handcrafted object. Symbols carved with a primitive tool are visible on the surface. I still have no idea what those are for. You know, back in the early access builds, I was convinced it was a combination, like a color combination, for a puzzle we'd encounter later in Act 1. It just never came up. I do notice, though, that they've really polished up the unique models for each of those artifacts, so I mean, they must mean something. The Grand Void Chip Temple occupies the entire space below the officer's deck, and is lit by countless candles and lumens. Doesn't feel like the most efficient use of space, but, I mean, what do I know? I didn't put any points in lore interior design. The lifts carrying people around the decks move with a loud, grinding noise. Oh, goodness. This is not a good place for an acrophobic. I beg your pardon, your lordship. After the incident with the beast that broke free, the passage is closed to everyone until the arch-militant says otherwise. See, he still mentions the beast. They did not update his dialogue.
Let us not dawdle.
That's interesting. Again, I wonder why they did that. I guess... well... Okay, I can probably guess why lore-wise. We'll circle back to it a little later. The massive golden structure never stops moving for a moment. Light bounces off the orbits and figures representing celestial bodies.
Rise to the top or get left in the dust.
That is simply irrational, Lady Theodora, says the man dressed in peculiar garb, his voice tight with tension. His face, half of which is covered by sin skin, is twisted in a grimace of displeasure and disbelief. Assimilation into the trade structure would be political and economic suicide. Practically an admission of heresy. The tall, gray-haired woman pins him with her gaze, her cybernetic eye flashing crimson. Then suggest an alternative that will satisfy me. I have described the situation, no worse than my seneschal could have done. Make a decision. What will you do with Aeon 6, Ethelthred? Huh, I guess they still don't have voice acting for Lady Theodora. Your first impression of Ethelthred, who appears to be about 30 years old, is of parchment-like skin stretched over a tightly bundled mass of sinew, implants, and bone. The nervously twitching fingers, the face twisted by a slight tic, and the jerky movements are all signs of some illness or defect that has taken over his physical form. In stark contrast to Ethelthred, Theodora von Valancius's features appear as if they were carved from marble, eternal and indestructible. Head raised high, proud posture, hands clasped casually behind her back. Everything seems to emphasize the difference in status between her and Ethelthred. Behind the two of them, you see two more men. One is a gray-haired officer of impeccable bearing, who is studying the contents of his data slate. The other is a behemoth bristling with holsters and baldricks, containing all manner of weapons. Our second candidate has joined us. The dry female voice and the powerful feeling of being watched force you to look at Theodora. The rogue trader is looking straight at you, and her gaze, like herself, is predatory and oppressive. Valen, approach and give me your answer. Consider this hypothetical situation. Aeon 6, A new world on the fringes of the Coronis expanse. High seismic activity, regular magma eruptions, metamorphic rock deposits, prospects for large-scale mining. The world is populated by natives who worship some heretical underworld spirits that protect those who offer them sacrifices. Flights of fancy, you might say. But attempts to install ore extractors have failed for the second time. The mining crew sent to the planet's surface simply vanished overnight. My question for you is, what would you do with this poisoned treasure? Ooh, and I've got some new responses here. All right, let's see. All right, so Valen does have faith in the Emperor and the Imperium, but doubts about Imperial dogma, so we're not going to lean that way. We're not overly concerned with the concept of Xenos. That's just more potential profit. Yeah, we'll just fall back on what he's already experienced with. Easy. The natives themselves would be the best source for that kind of intel. The secrets of a world unlocked for the price of a few off-world trinkets. Trying to apply familiar methods to new problems, are we? Theodora raises an eyebrow. The criminal underworld of Calixis is a far cry from a savage borderland planet. The criminal underworld of Calixis? Ethelthred examines you and purses his lips in disgust. Lady Theodora, I must say your taste in company is rather exotic. Or do you see this as an opportunity to weed out the heresy among your progeny and sever the rotting branches of your dynastic tree? What, you mean like people who can't give straight answers to simple questions? You'd be the first to go, Ed. The color drains from Ethelthred's face, which distorts his features further. Insolent, ignorant upstart! How dare you! Ethelthred. Theodora's tone renders him silent. I believe I gave you an assignment on this ship. Explain to me, then, why my senior congregator is still dawdling about the officer's deck, instead of proceeding to the middle decks to commence the inspection of the compartments in his purview. I beg your forgiveness, Lady Theodora. Your presence has such a profound effect on me that I, well, forgot the time. Ethelthred bows ceremoniously and takes his leave without sparing you another look. Farewell, farewell. Theodora's gaze follows him as he leaves. Then she turns to you. So, Valen, why are you here? Good question. I was going to ask that myself. Don't suppose you have any answers for me. You are direct. I approve. But you will have to wait. There is something I want you to understand first. My name is Theodora von Valancius Massimo Afscaris. I am a rogue traitor in the service of the God Emperor of Humanity, and my rights and freedoms are vindicated by a most sacred relic, the warrant of trade kept aboard this very vessel. Mine is the honor to venture into the darkness beyond the Imperium, and carry humanity's light where powers wicked and heretical reign, and bode death and ruin to us all. It is my decision alone to determine the fate of whatever I find past the bounds of the explored void. Every world I discover, along with all there is to find thereon, resources, people, riches, and mysteries, is mine by right. I command millions of lives, rule over numerous planets, and possess fortunes that no planetary governor or commander could dream of amassing. And you, Valen, are one of those with the von Valancius blood in their veins, and a rightful claim to this inheritance. when the hour comes. Yeah, so I've heard. Not exactly somewhere I ever saw myself ending up, but I'll take the job if you're offering. Oh, yes, you would, wouldn't you? The question is, am I ready to choose you over the rest? You came aboard hours before the warp jump and have not yet distinguished yourself in any way. As things currently stand, I have doubts that you are suitable for the role of rogue trader. Blood right alone is not enough to earn the high honor of becoming the bearer of a warrant of trade. Nonetheless, your abilities and talents may yet prove useful, if not for the role of Lord Captain, then for that of their closest ally. Theodora sighs and looks away pensively for a brief moment. Alas, even those responsibilities can at times be too challenging for those who share your blood. Conrad Voigtveer served me for many years before he made his mistake. You're saying Voigtveer's one of my rivals. Funny, he failed to mention that. Yes, his kinship to me is most distant, as is yours. Nonetheless, he does bear the name von Valancius, even if he avoids using it publicly, and as such, strictly speaking, can be considered my heir. That door, however, is closed to him. Voigtveer's performance in his current role is satisfactory. Or it used to be, at least. Wouldn't worry about it. Seems like you've got plenty of viable backups. Me, Ed. Naturally. Some have yet to arrive on board, but you have had the pleasure of meeting one of them. Ethelthred may be somewhat disconcerted by the scale of the responsibilities that may potentially fall upon his shoulders. However, I have a good feeling about him as a candidate. Oh, yeah? Then why drag me into this? Why waste my time and yours if you've already made your choice? Theodora shakes her head. Impatience. I am rather fond of impatient people. They are not as quick to resign themselves to circumstance, and more eager to show initiative. Even if I do choose Ethelthred as my successor, I will still require loyal advisors. The skills and knowledge you acquired in your former life may prove invaluable here in the Coronis Expanse. One could not in good faith describe your background as one of exemplary service to the Imperium. However, Theodora permits herself a sly smile. I am intrigued by you and your past. To have survived and prospered between the letters of the law is a rare achievement among those in our circle. You are skilled in the art of taking risks and cutting corners. Trust me when I say that you will have sufficient opportunity to apply this talent for the good of the house. Moreover, Theodora inclines her head slightly, your remarkable mental abilities were noted in your profile. If you can find a way to exhibit them in service of the von Valancius dynasty, well, so much the better. Yeah, sure. Always nice to be appreciated. Don't suppose I get some questions before I get press-ganged into service. The box affixed to Theodora's attire suddenly comes to life, but all you can hear is unintelligible noise. Theodora winces, shuts off the transmission, and gives you an imperious nod. I have some time before the navigator gives the signal to initiate the void ship's translation out of the warp, and my presence is required on the bridge. Well, I'll make it quick then. On my way here, a servitor malfunctioned, tried to kill me. Any thoughts on that? Is that so? Perhaps the technomats were careless during maintenance. Or it could be the warp playing tricks on us in spite of the Geller field. Or perhaps our possessed ship was in the mood for a lark. Theodora laughs nonchalantly. The gray-haired officer gives the rogue traitor a look of cautious disapproval. Lady Theodora, for the God Emperor's sake, surely you do not intend to start repeating idle rumors spread about by uneducated riffraff. Enough, Abelard. Such hearsay amuses me. Adira eagerly retells me everything she learns from the whispers of her unseen advisors. She turns to you. This ship is thousands of years old. It has enough hidden nooks, malfunctioning cogitators, and unused compartments to make ignorant folk speak of specters dwelling inside the bulkheads and plotting against those who yet live. I see. Very, reassuring. So where's this ghost ship headed? The Rycat system, the domain of rogue traitor Winterscale, one of my peers, and rivals. Only 3 rogue traitors exist in the Coronis Expanse, and each of them possesses resources comparable to mine. Perhaps you will one day assist House von Valancius in surpassing both of them in affluence and splendor. Yeah, looking forward to that. I set the course for Rycat on the demand. Theodora grimaces. She gives you a stern look, then shrugs. For a very specific reason. Perhaps I shall yet apprise you of the purpose of this voyage. But now is not the time. Sure. So what exactly am I supposed to be doing? You have a task for me, or should I just take the initiative and start pushing buttons? Observe, learn, absorb. It will take time for you to find your bearings aboard this vessel and in your new position. Eventually, I will find a post that suits you, as I did for Ethelthred. Until that time comes, consider yourself my aide. So, listen and learn. Yeah, I think I can manage that. No further questions. In that case, I shall head to... Theodora's Vox awakens once more. This time you pick up shouting. The Lord Captain freezes, listening to the Voxcast, then nods and draws her weapon. Disturbances reported on the adjacent decks. Seneschal, if the need arises, protect the new blood. She glances at you. It is possible that the chance to prove your worth may present itself sooner than you may have anticipated.
I'll make an example out of you.
All of you will bleed!
Oh man, they've really stepped up those cutscenes. That was much nicer than it was in the early access builds. All right, let's do this. Though methinks we'll be a bit overshadowed by the veteran crew.
Reduced to dust.
Yeah. Hey, we get to do a thing. Okay, let's push for cover, and we'll take a pot shot. Not seeing 2 hits, that's weird. And a whiff. No surprise there. First level character rocking a short range revolver, we're not going to hit much. But it's fine. This is essentially just a glorified set piece battle.
Brace yourself, Abelard. took care of this one.
That you did, Abby.
Pain and duty go hand in hand.
All right, take two. Can we actually hit someone this time? Signs point towards no. We've got to get ourselves a long arm.
Oh, this'll leave a scar.
Theodora waves her hand in a commanding gesture. Mort, take a team with you and clear a path to the transport line. Do not let a single horse survive. Yikes, language. The rogue trader turns her eyes to you. Didn't bat an eye when that scum burst onto the deck, Not bad. I have seen many an officer who panicked at the sight of combat on the upper decks. The false sense of security makes them that much more susceptible to the harsh realities of warp transitions. She looks at the box in her hand. All you can hear is lifeless static. Yeah, happy to contribute. That is certainly what I did during that fight. The thought does occur that this mutiny might have something to do with that conveniently timed servitor attack. Possibly. Quite likely. Theodora winces and flicks the switch on her box a few times. We will investigate at a later time. Right now, we need to isolate the affected compartments and try to assess the situation. As you say, Lord Captain. Any idea what's going on? From what we have seen, Balin, I can speculate that we are dealing with some variety of warp madness. The Seneschal is astonishingly calm for someone who just survived a sudden attack. Such episodes are not uncommon amongst voidsmen who have found themselves outside the boundaries of real space. Though such episodes seldom spill onto other decks. Theodora clicks her box a few times. The casters are not working, or have been sabotaged. Either the warp is toying with us, or someone went to great lengths to cut the ship's communications. I will need a direct channel to the Exsellsior Prime before I can get a sense of what we are up against. Whatever it may be, keep your weapons at the ready. I imagine it will be some time before we no longer need them. Yeah, story of my life. Gotta say though, Lord Captain, you seem to be taking this in stride. This happen often? The Seneschal gives you a gloomy look. Trust me, Valin, this is hardly surprising for a crew of thousands. The lower decks are a fertile environment for discontent and heresy. No matter how one tries to incinerate any seed before it can take root. All it takes is a hint of warp influence to cloud the minds of normally obedient cattle. Yikes, easy there, Abby. Sporadic riots on the lower decks never reach these compartments. Theodora's anger causes the Seneschal to shrink slightly. No, the tumults of the rabble are always contained within their own territory. This is too well organized. It is spreading too rapidly. Then let's do something about it. She breaks eye contact with you. Mort has gone on ahead to clear a path for us. If you want to make yourself useful, go after him, and see if the arch-militant requires aid. And be quick about it. Aye, aye, Captain. I will do that. I'm concerned about the disrupted communication with the Navigator's Sanctum. We should have already approached the translation point. and proceeded to real space. Once we are done with the riot, I want to have a look at the Logisticar's reports. We need to understand what happened on the decks during the warp jump, and the preparations preceding it. And some weird behavior over in the text log here. But again, this is the pre-launch press build. I'll be updating to the full launch build tomorrow.
Keep your wits about
So you'll just have to bear with me for the first episode or two. I will say, though, this is already leaps and bounds beyond what we saw in the beta. There are a lot of granular improvements.
Is there money to be made?
And there have been some slight divergences from what I was expecting based on what we saw during the early access series. Can we not loot these corpses? All right, well, let's move things along. We'll leave those two to their discussion and track down the arch-militant.
I always keep my options open.
Yeah, nothing. I was hoping they might have something tucked in a corner away from prying eyes. Owlcat does love to hide things in every nook and cranny. But alas, we'll just have to make do with what we've got for now. Conrad Voigtveer lets out a sigh of relief upon seeing you. Thank Providence you are alive and well. Always on time, eh, Conrad? The moment we finish chasing the riffraff around the deck, you show up. Always just after the fighting's done. You could set your chrono by it, said Mort, the one member of Theodora's retinue who does not have a custom portrait. It's fine, I'm sure I'll live forever. Conrad pointedly looks away from the arch-militant to you. Mort, pull yourself together. The arch-militant looks back at you. What, did the Lord Captain send you to chivvy us along? We're all done here. I'll report right away. Mort pulls his box from the belt and hurriedly reports on the situation. Master of Whispers, what is happening on my ship? The Voxnet is silent. The Voxmaster is not responding. Armed assailants have stormed the officer's deck, and my arch-militant just destroyed several more heretics on the way here. Is this a severe case of warp madness? Have some of my crew lost their minds and forgotten who they are and whom they serve? Report! I have not yet received word from the Engineerium regarding any Geller field failures. But communications were already unstable half an hour ago, and now they've ceased altogether. Whatever the cause may be, the consequences are spreading fast. I am receiving scattered reports from the middle decks, and the only voxcasts from the lower bays are one-way heretical gibberish. Voigtveer pauses. That the madmen have already reached the officers' decks suggests that this outrage was planned in advance. Perhaps this is an organized mutiny. We should get to the mid-decks, join the fighters who are still loyal to the Lord Captain. We might be able to stop this thing from spreading any further. First, we have to confirm that the bridge and the Navigator's Sanctum are secure, and I have the means to do both things at once. Her expression changes, and her eyes flash ominously. Oh dear. Theodora looks at Voigtveer. Ethelthred, where is he? I must know if he is unharmed. A psyker aboard a ship that is potentially being assailed by the warp could pose a greater threat to himself and others than the whole army of madmen with improvised weaponry. I tried to locate him, but the last thing known about his movements is that he arrived on Transitional Deck 18. Blast it! Master of Whispers, find Ethelthred immediately! Seneschal, locate Tomasz and the Sister of Battle. Both are to remain at my side. Archmilitant, with me. I must go to my study, and it appears that we may encounter heretics along the way. Valen. Theodora glances at you, thoughtfully. If I may, Lord Captain. Voidvir's voice is soft and cautious. Transitional Deck 18 is the heart of the disturbance, and if our goal is to bring Ethelthred back, I could use some support. After all, I am not as adept at directly confronting enemies of the house as the esteemed Archmilitant, and taking into consideration Ethelthred's psyker powers... bye. Then it's settled. Valen, find Ethelthred and bring him here, in whatever state you find him. This elevator, she points at the massive doors, leads to restricted compartments such as my personal chambers and the bridge. Do not let me down. I require you both. Do you understand? In whatever state. That mean what I think it means? Conrad coughs. We are in the warp. Considering the attack, there could be a disruption in the Geller field and the infiltration of malevolent forces onto the decks. Psykers can react to such things in the most unpredictable ways. Enough. Master of Whispers, you must not allow my heir to turn into a mindless mutant and perish under Enforcer fire. Do whatever it takes to bring Ethelthred back to me. All right. Understood. Consider it done. Theodora waves a hand impatiently. Then move out. Mort, come. Inappropriate. Voidvir gives you a nod. Are you ready to head to 18? It's a long walk, and you don't even have proper gear. Yeah, I think I'll be fine. Not my first time roughing it. You just make sure you hold up your side. The Lord Captain had some interesting things to say about your reliability. Not to mention your lineage. Something you conveniently neglected to mention. But hey, I suppose it's all relative, right? He pales at your words, but you cannot tell if it is because of shame or fury. I see you have quickly earned Lady Theodora's trust if she is already sharing her closely guarded secrets with you. But that is no longer relevant. With a pop and a sharp crackle, something hits you in the abdomen, and you are consumed by unbearable, gut-wrenching pain. Ow. I promised you a special destiny, Valen. It is time to fulfill it. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal! And yes, circling back to that first tutorial fight, I imagine that is why they made the change. A deliberately sabotaged servitor could be programmed to avoid Voidvir. An escaped wild beast, perhaps slightly less so. That said, we're past the hour mark, my throat's getting a bit rough, and this feels like a natural cliffhanger to leave off on, so we'll hit the pause button for now, we'll go grab a drink, spend some time recuperating, and we will pick up here next time, as we contend with Voidvir's unwarranted behavior. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Revenant, Alois, Blindiron, CrowkingLoR, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, Theory V23, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.